Hey everybody, it's Retro DM Ray. Hey, I'm back with you after a hiatus. I've actually been purchasing our first new home with my family of five and moving about 15-20 miles away from where we used to live. And if you don't know, that is quite an incredible and difficult challenge, but it has been a huge blessing. So I appreciate your patience and hanging on with us as we move on now on the channel. If you like this content, again, as always, please like and subscribe and share with your friends and family. It's always G-rated, no nonsense, just old school gaming talk. Check the description for ways in which you can connect with me, Facebook, buy me a coffee, my drive-through RPG affiliate link, my Patreon, a bunch of other stuff like that. Thank you all for all of the subscribers. Man, we have really ramped up. We are over 400 now. I am pushing hard for that 500 mark so I can start asking some poll questions and posting some stuff like that, and you guys can start responding to some of those things, and we can kind of kick off in a bigger and new direction with some things. But I appreciate all of you who have subbed, and thanks so much for commenting and all those other things. Now, last time I talked about, I think towards the end of the video or somewhere thereabouts, that I was going to start covering a new resource for basic fantasy RPG, which was the Libram Magica, Libram Magica, Magica. It's downloadable from the website. This is release number 2, copyright 2008 to 2013 by R. Kevin Smoot and collaborators. Of course, Basic Fantasy, a role-playing game, is by Chris Gonnerman and collaborators as well. I thought I would start covering the Libram Magica here, which is basically a collection of all kinds of collaborator spells that passed through the R. Kevin Smoot and other collaborators, as well as Chris Gonnerman's eyes, to determine if they were things that they would allow into the game and that fit the parameters of the style of game that they're trying to produce here, this system. And so these are all a bunch of different spells. There's learning and researching spells here on the first page, general rules for researching, experience from doing research. There's an optional spell research rules. That's quite a hefty little section here. And on to page 2, they talk about 0 level and 7th level spells. And then on page 3, they talk about spell lists. And then they give you the formatting that they use for the different spells themselves. Then pages 4 and 5, they delve into the different spell lists. That continues on to 6 and then on into page 7. Page 8, after we've gone through Cleric and Druid, when we've gone through Magic User, now we're on to Illusionist as well as Necromancer spells. And if you don't know about those, check out the website. There are different alternative classes that you can use, basically specialty wizards, and the idea of a specialty priest or a druid, as it were. That's also on there as an option, so that's why I mentioned those lists. But I thought what I'd like to do for old school is, in order to cover this, I thought I might pick each time a particular spell, and we would talk about it across the various editions. And that's up into and including 2nd edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. I won't go any further than that. I did play 3rd edition, dabbled in a little bit of 3.5, quickly lost interest in that. Never played 4th edition, didn't care for that system at all. And didn't play Pathfinder 1st edition. And so I'll just stop at AD&D 2nd edition, which is what I ran for many, many years after having my start in the earlier and old editions. So we're going to take a look at what Libram Magica has to say about the spell that I pick. And then we're going to move from that to BX. We're going to move from BX to BECMI, which is actually going to be out of the Rule Cyclopedia. Then we're going to move to Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 1st edition. And then we're going to conclude with Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition, and we take a look at that spell in each one of those places and notice any differences that we might see there kind of as we travel. All right? So the first spell that I picked is just really, really a classic one. It's one of my favorite ones when I play a Magic User, and we're going to start with Magic User spells, and that is Magic Missile. So here's the entry in Libram Magica. Magic Missile is MU level 1. Its range is 100 feet plus 10 foot per level. Its duration is instantaneous. And here's the text. This spell causes a missile of magical energy to dart forth from the caster's fingertip and strike its target, dealing 1d6 plus 1 points of damage. The missile strikes unerringly, even if the target is in melee combat or has less than total cover or total concealment. Specific parts of a creature cannot be singled out. Inanimate objects are not damaged by the spell. For every 3 caster levels beyond first, an additional missile is fired. So 2 at 4th, 3 at 7th, 4 at 10th, and 5 missiles maximum at 13th level or higher. If the caster fires multiple missiles, he or she can target a single creature or several creatures. A single missile can strike only 1 creature. Targets must be designated before damage is rolled. Okay, so that's Libram Magica. Now let's move to what BX has to say about Magic Missile. BX Magic Missile entry actually says this. Of course, it's magic user. It's a first level magic user spell. Its range is 150 feet. That's it. Its duration is 1 turn. That's different. The other one was instantaneous. This one is 1 turn. Okay, and I'll explain the reason why here in just a second. Here's what the text says. A magic missile is a glowing arrow created and shot by magic, which does 2 to 7 or 1d6 plus 1 points of damage to any creature it strikes. It will automatically hit any visible target. For every 5 levels the caster has gained, he or she may shoot 2 more missiles when casting the spell. For example, a 6th level magic user may cast 3 missiles. These may be shot at 1 target, or the caster may choose to cast the missiles at different targets. So, why the duration of 1 turn? BX Magic Missile was, you cast the spell, and then you have 1 turn in which to decide to fire off the missile or missiles that are hovering around you now. Now, for me, I think that's kind of a cool image, a cool idea, that your magic user is shown to have some considerable power, especially if they've got 3 missiles hovering around them, waiting to be shot at any moment. I think that's just a cool scene. The damage is exactly the same. The range is only 150 feet, whereas if you had that as a first level MU in Libram Magica, it would be 110 feet to start. And then it would be 10 feet more at 2nd and 3rd and 4th, and then 5th. At that point, it would be 150 feet. So soon it would outdistance this magic missile in the BX game. And in that Libram Magica system, you get 1 missile every 3 levels. So 4th, 7th, 10th, and then 13th. And here, every 5 levels, you get to shoot 2 more. So the math is just slightly different. But the damage is exactly the same. It's d6 plus 1 damage. There in the Libram Magica, it says that whether they're in melee or not, and as long as they have less than total cover or total concealment. So in here, in BX, it says it will automatically hit any visible target. So it's the same thing. If they're visible, even a small part of them, they're capable of being a target. So other than that range difference and the when you get how many missiles is the only thing that's different there. So let's move to BECMI. All right, so BECMI Magic Missile. Range 150 feet. That's BX, right? Duration 1 round. Effect creates 1 or more arrows. A magic missile is a glowing arrow created and shot by magic which inflicts 1d6 plus 1, 2 to 7 points of damage to any creature it strikes. After the spell is cast, the arrow appears next to the spellcaster and hovers there, moving with him until the spellcaster causes it to shoot. When shot, the magic missile will automatically hit any 1 visible target the spellcaster specifies. The magic missile has no solid form and cannot be touched. A magical missile never misses its target, and the target is not allowed a saving throw. For every 5 levels of experience of the caster, 2 more missiles are created by the same spell. Thus, a 6th level spellcaster may create 3 missiles. The spellcaster may shoot the missiles all at 1 target or at different targets. So, there isn't really any difference there between the BX Magic Missile and the BECMI Magic Missile that I can see, with the exception of just how things are stated in the description, and the key indicator is duration 1 round. So it's not 1 turn in BX as it is in BX. It's 1 round. So you cast it, and let's say you cast it at the beginning of the round. You would have until the end of that round to shoot off the missiles because it would hover around. Now, based upon how you did initiative and that type of stuff, might cause differences in when you would be able to say, I'm going to shoot that off. But still, that's the difference there. Okay? Now, let's go to Advanced Dungeons & Dragons First Edition. First Edition Magic Missile. It's level 1. It's now, in parentheses, an evocation spell. So this is a spell school's beginning here, right? Then it has components, verbal and semantic. Again, this is a new addition to the game. So you must say something and you must gesture in some way. And then the range is 6 inches plus 1 inch per level. We won't get into the details of inches in First Edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. Somebody else who is more mathematically inclined to describe that may do that. Suffice it to say, the range is 6 inches plus 1 inch per level is a bit different than the ones we've read so far. Casting time is 1 segment. That means it's 1 segment of the number of segments made up in what you rolled for your initiative on the dice as to when you go. So in other words, that would add a segment to the speed in which this might occur or in which you might complete the casting of this. Then its duration is special, has no saving throw, and its area of effect is 1 or more creatures in a 10 square foot area. So now it's delineated that it's very, very finite as into where the creatures are that you can target. They must be nearby each other. Okay, so here's the text. Use of the magic missile spell creates 1 or more magical missiles which dart forth from the magic user's fingertip and unerringly strike their target. Each missile does 2 to 5 hit points, d4 plus 1, of damage. If the magic user has multiple missile capability, he or she can have them strike a single target creature or several creatures as desired. For each level of experience of the magic user, the range of his or her magic missile extends 1 inch beyond the 6-inch base range. For every 2 levels of experience, the magic user gains an additional missile, i.e. 2 at 3rd, 3 at 5th, 4 at 7th, etc. Okay, so this is slightly different than Libram Magica, which gives you an additional missile 2 at 4th. This one is 2 at 3rd. Libram Magica says 3 at 7th. This one's 3 at 5th, etc. Now, according to my Advanced First Edition Player's Handbook here, which is the printing of this one is from the 6th printing from January of 1980. It shows no upper limit as to how many missiles you would have. Although I believe that's delineated in the Dungeon Master's Guide, but don't quote me on that. Somebody can put in the comments and share about that. Somebody wants to put in the comments and share about inches and convert that for us into feet or yards or whatever. Hey, that'd be awesome. Do that too. So that's the First Edition Magic Missile. Again, just reading those, man, brings back these days of when I used to cast this spell on a regular basis as my, I need to do something good and survive with my puny magic user. All right, this is the 2nd edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, our last one for today. This one also is Evocation. Range is 60 yards plus 10 yards per level. Might tell you something about the inches, but we'll leave that there. Components are additionally verbal and semantic, just like Advanced First Edition. Duration is instantaneous. Casting time is 1, which in First Edition Advanced was 1 segment. In this case, it's 1, as in that's its casting speed, adds 1 to your initiative. Very similar. Area of effect, 1 or more creatures in a 10-foot cube. That's the same. Saving throw, none. That's the same. Use of the magic missile spell creates up to 5 missiles of magical energy that dart forth from the wizard's fingertip and unerringly strike their target. This includes enemy creatures in a melee. The target creature must be seen or otherwise detected to be hit. Aha. However, so near total concealment. Near total concealment is the problem, such as that offered by arrow slits, can render the spell ineffective. So if you can't see the person, the creature, or thing that you're hitting beyond the arrow slit, then you cannot target it. Likewise, the caster must be able to identify the target. Ah, that's different. He cannot direct a magic missile to strike the commander of the Legion unless he can single out the commander from the rest of the soldiers. Specific parts of a creature cannot be singled out. Inanimate objects, locks, etc. cannot be damaged by the spell, and any attempt to do so wastes the missiles to no effect. Against creatures, each missile inflicts 1d4 plus 1 points of damage. That's the same. For every 2 levels of experience, the wizard gains an additional missile. He has 2 at 3rd, 3 at 5th, 4 at 7th, etc., up to a total of 5 missiles at 9th level. So there's the finite peak here now listed for you in the Player's Handbook in Advanced 2nd Edition. But otherwise, that's the same. If the wizard has multiple missile capability, he can have them strike a single target creature or several creatures as desired. But remember, just like Advanced 1st Edition, they must all be within a 10-foot cube. A cube 10 foot per side, in other words, or a square 10 foot per side. All right. So, like I said, you see in the range reading there, maybe a hint at what's going on in the inches in the Advanced 1st Edition. But you do see that they must be able to identify the target. But that doesn't mean that you can't say, I'm going to strike that orc, even if you don't know it's an orc. What it means is you can't say, I want to shoot the commander, if you don't know who the commander is. That's what identify the target means. That wording there can be a little odd if you're not careful with reading the example. Okay? I feel like there were some words in Advanced 2nd Edition Dungeons & Dragons that could have been a little bit better. I think that's true for all the editions, though. Just the way things that were worded were perhaps a little more confusing than they needed to be, or a little more off-putting than they needed to be, and it took some work. However, on the upside of that, being an old school guy, I will tell you that work is a labor of love. Reading through this over and over, through the Player's Handbook, through the Dungeon Master's Guide, through the Monster Manual, if you're the DM. Because I believe that the players shouldn't be looking through the Monsters Manuals or Monstrous Manual if you're talking about 2nd Edition. The DM's rule books, if you're talking about BECMI, or that part of the rules cyclopedia, if you're using that. I don't believe they should have access to that part of the Basic Fantasy RPG core book. I don't believe they should have access to the creature books that are in a Basic Fantasy RPG as well, the field guides, because they're not running the game. But also in old school games, when we played, and I'm sure many people did this, I know Bandits Keep talks about this in one of his videos. Metagaming killing really wasn't a thing. Like, if you knew it as a player, then, your characters you just played. Whether your characters necessarily might know that or not was kind of a spur of the moment DM thing. He would tell you that your character didn't know that. Otherwise, you just played with kind of what you knew, and you just played your characters, and well, somehow your character just knew that stuff, and that's just kind of how you played. And sometimes you didn't. It just depends on how the DM runs the game and who's running it and what the DM feels is important that you should or shouldn't know. That was kind of old school the way we played it. And I still like to play it that way today. I certainly play Basic Fantasy that way. I have kids that just gobble up these books, so they read these books like crazy all of the time. And I'll catch them a lot of the times reading stuff that I'd rather them not read. And so as a DM, I'll switch it all up and make it different, and they'll wonder, hey, where did that come from? And that's because I took something from one and put it on another, and back and forth. Or I might grab something from DCC and throw it in there, or I might grab something even from something I saw from Pathfinder 1st or 2nd Edition, just to grab something to make it different for them to go, oh, what's that? But just change the skin, if you know what I mean, or that type of a thing, to change it up and make it and mix it up and be different. But the fact that they're sitting around reading these old books, that gives this old dungeon master good vibes. Makes me feel good about my kids that they're being trained up in the way that they should go as far as old school is concerned. So if you like this type of coverage across these editions like this for spells, hey, put in the comments what you'd like to hear about in the next spell. Pick it. I'll take a look through the comments, and whichever one is the most popular will be the one that we'll talk about the next time. For example, once we get to that 500 subscriber mark, then these are things that I can throw out there as poll questions, and then I can get those results back and be covering that kind of stuff for you guys. I think that would be really fun. And then we can deep dive into the additional classes in basic fantasy. We can talk about the complete books, for example, and some kits and stuff in there from Advanced Second Edition. We can take a look at some of the different Dragon Magazine editions to Advanced Dungeons & Dragons First Edition. We can take a look at some of the things for in Rules Cyclopedia from the BECMI era that I also played in. I can tell you, check out Bandit's Keep, man. He's doing some cool polls as far as creating some things from modern systems today and converting them to BX style of stuff. He likes input on that, so check that out. Shout out to him. Again, as always, check out Rob's Gaming Group channel and check out his YouTube channel. He's got some good stuff where he reviews and talks about some things. He's a great guy. Dungeon Minister, again, fantastic and funny, like recaps of the adventures that he runs for his wife and kids. Super, super cool. Those types of things. I'm not the whiz that he is on putting together his videos and stuff like that, but they're just awesome. You really ought to check those out. Check out some other channels. Take a look at some of the different things that are out there. There's Smugzoid is out there. There's a guy who has, I don't remember his channel right now, sorry buddy, that has some D&D tips. So take a look at D&D tips or D&D DM tips. That guy's got some good stuff that's going on out there. I can't endorse any of them for as far as whether it's language or not. I do know Rob's doesn't have that, and that's for certain. But otherwise, check out these other channels. We might as well have a big old community of all of us doing this old school stuff, and doing it really cool and talking with each other about this stuff. Thank you again for liking and subscribing and sharing. I'm looking forward to what we're going to come up with the next one. Again, put that in the comments and let me know. Share this out there. Check me out on Patreon. I'm going to start creating some little one-shot scenarios here soon. Put them up on Patreon. You're welcome to become a patron and take a look at those and download that stuff for yourself. I'm not an artist, but I will do some maps occasionally to add to those, so check that out coming soon too. And thanks y'all for listening and tuning in. I really appreciate it. And as I always say in all my videos, may all your rolls be nat 20s. Later.